everyone, I'm Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. I'm going to demonstrate a variety of methods for doing a gathering stitch. Some of the methods work really well for me and then others not so much. So what I want you to do is test them all out and see what works best for you. So let's get started. Before I get started demonstrating the zigzag stitches, I'm going to show you what kind of sewing machine I use because I get asked this question all the time. I'm using a baby lock. My machine is fairly new to me and the model is called the Crescendo. And this baby lock machine I really like because I do like to quilt and I like to do decorative stitching. And so this machine does both, and it gives me a huge variety of zigzag stitches and straight stitches, which are very beneficial to doing a gathering stitch. All you need on your sewing machine for the gathering stitches that I'm going to demonstrate today is a straight stitch or a basting stitch and a zigzag stitch. This is a hand basting stitch, so in order for you to successfully gather, make sure you have a knot at the end of your thread. And I'm just using a single strand of thread. So you basically just go in and out, and then when you get to the end of wherever you're stitching at, then you would just hold on to the end with the needle. Because you've got a knot here, then you would just begin gathering it up. And you would just evenly spread your gathers out. Sometimes when you're doing just a single row of basting stitches and you pull on it, sometimes the thread might break. So as a safety net, do a second row of basting stitches, maybe 1/4 of an inch apart, and then pull on both threads at the same time and begin to gather everything up. Now, one of the reasons why I like to have 2 rows of gathering stitches is that when you go to pin it on to your next layer of fabric, supposing this is going to be a skirt, you're going to put a waistband on it. When you have 2 rows of basting stitches, this will lay a little flatter than if you use just a single row of basting stitches. A single row of basting stitches, sometimes your fabric begins to twist and then it's more difficult to attach it to another layer of fabric. To do a machine basting stitch, I recommend that in your bobbin you have a different color of thread than you do on top. That's because later on when you begin to gather everything, pulling your threads, it's easier to find which one is the bobbin thread, because your bobbin thread is the one you're going to pull on later. So that's why I have 2 different colors. Make sure you've got both strands pulled out and you've got a nice little length there so it's easier to get started. I have my basting stitch length set to 10. If you do not have a dedicated basting stitch, then set your regular straight stitch to as long as it will go, which is probably going to be 5. I find that when you have a length of 10, it's just so much easier to pull on the threads. So go ahead and stitch a line, and you can either do a single row of basting stitches or 2. And pull out long strands of thread and cut. Now you're going to pull on the bottom, and you can just flip it over like that. And I apologize if my hand is getting in the way, but pull on the thread with one hand and with the other hand gather it up so that it's going to look like this. If you decide to do 2 rows of basting stitches, again you would still pull on the bobbin thread of both rows and then gather it up. And this is my preferred way because then your gathers just seem to be more even, and again, it's easier to pin it to another layer of fabric if you need to. And if one strand breaks while you're gathering, you still have the other thread to pull on. Another way to do a gathering stitch along with your zigzag stitch is to use crochet yarn. It's very, very thin, and you would just lay that yarn down. Make sure you leave a tail out here because that's what you're going to pull on later. And then do your zigzag over the top. So you're going to keep the yarn or the crochet thread right in the center. And let me lift this up again. I just need to move it a little bit because I want to make sure it's in the center. And then you would just begin stitching right over it, keeping that crochet thread in the middle. And then make sure your needle is up. Pull it out. And then instead of pulling on the thread, you pull on the crochet thread and gather it up. Another way to gather your fabric is to actually use elastic. Now this is permanent, and what's really nice about using elastic is if you use it on the end of a sleeve, it's easy to get your hand in and out because you can pull on the elastic to slip your hand through. So what's important though before you begin to stitch is make sure you leave a tail out past the edge of your fabric so that you can hold on to one end of the elastic with one hand and the other end of the elastic with the other hand. And you're using just a regular zigzag stitch. Now this way of doing it is a little difficult for me. It's only because I have a problem with one of my hands. It doesn't close. So I'm going to do my best to demonstrate it to you, but I think after looking and watching, you'll get the general idea. So what you do is you stretch your elastic out. Now I've got my needle down through the elastic, and you're going to stretch it out and hold on to it with one hand, and then it's important you grab with the other hand the elastic back here and just gently pull. Don't pull it so hard that your machine doesn't move forward because you want it to move forward. And remember, you're using a zigzag stitch. And if you need to stop and adjust and pull on the elastic again, because for me it kind of slips out from underneath my thumb because my thumb is the only part that works on my hand. So I'm going to do just a little bit more. And all right, let's take a look. And there you can see it gathers. And by the way, you would put it on the back side of your fabric and then the elastic is hidden, but that's basically how you would do it. And when you pull on your fabric, it opens up like that. On my baby lock sewing machine, I do not have a gathering presser foot, but I do for my Viking sewing machine. So it is not my favorite way of doing it because I've yet to get it to work very well, and I've heard this from others also. So, but I'm going to try to attempt to show you how it works, and it's got two different ways of using it. The second way that I will be showing you is using two pieces of fabric, and one piece goes in this little slit you can see right there on the presser foot. So it slides right in there on that slit, and then you have another piece of fabric under the presser foot. But first, I'm going to just show you a very basic way to use it. So I'm going to put the foot on now. One of the ways you can do it is to either place your finger behind the presser foot, which I find is very uncomfortable and sometimes hurts my hand. So what I do, I take something very small like this little seam ripper and I stick it behind the presser foot. And what you want to do is allow the fabric to bunch up behind the presser foot. So I'm just going to do a regular straight stitch. And you can see that the fabric is bunching up. All right, let me just undo it here. And when you take it out, it's gathered. So that's one way of doing it. Let me show you the other way. The fabric that's on the bottom is the fabric that will gather up. So have it front side facing up. And then the next piece of fabric, which goes over the top, you're going to bring it front side down on top of it, and you're going to slide it inside of here. And the trick, which is really difficult, is to try to keep your edges together and not allow the fabric to wander all over the place. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Now the one thing you don't want to do is pull on that bottom fabric. You just want to guide it, as well as the fabric on top. You're just guiding it. And I'm going to put my seam ripper behind just like I did on the other one, and let's see what happens. Now remember, just guide the fabric. You don't pull on it, you just guide it. And I'm going to do a little bit more, and you can see it's hard to control where that fabric goes. All right. So as you can see, with a lot of practice on my part, because there is certainly room for improvement, but I think you get the basic understanding of how that presser foot is supposed to work. You're probably asking, what is the purpose of this? Well, let's say you're putting a cuff on a shirt, and this way it gathers the fabric and stitches the cuff to the fabric at the same time. Or if you're making a gathered skirt and you're putting a waistband on it, that's the same concept. It gathers the skirt fabric and keeps the waistband fabric straight. For more sewing tips and other beginners sewing projects, play this video until a green screen appears and then click on the links. If you like this video, please click on thumbs up, and don't forget to click on share to share this video with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click on that red subscribe button down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Click on the bell and enter your email address so you can receive notifications about my latest video. If you're not receiving the notifications, then go to your cell phone or iPad, click on settings, and turn notifications on. This is Maria, Manny, and Jamie. So glad you came to my sewing room. Happy sewing!
Let's throw this at her.